Hello friends, and welcome back to Player's Companion. As always, I am Dustin.
I'm Haley.
And today, we are here to talk to you about Tales of the Valiant.
Formerly known as Black Flag.
Yeah, I liked it when it was Black Flag.
Yeah.
That's fine. Alright, anyway, for those of you who don't know, Tales of the Valiant is one of many attempts of the indie RPG industry to try and basically replace Dungeons & Dragons, if you will, after their whole fiasco with the OGL. If you're not familiar with that, Google it. Now, Kobold Press has made some very good books that we've enjoyed a lot in the past. Yeah. I started with them buying their stuff back when they put out their first Tome of Beasts, just as an alternative to the Monster Manual, because there's not really a lot of monsters in 5th edition compared to past editions. They've had so many different monster manuals come out and everything. So those were high quality books. They've since put out their own setting, Midgard, and spell catalogs, all kinds of other source books, and are all very well written. And so now, with a lot of keen interest, we're looking at Tales of the Valiant, which is their official new core rulebook and setting and all that good stuff. And they've recently had their Kickstarter a couple months ago finished up. Over $1 million raised. Lots of people excited about that. They've recently put out the alpha rules and the first small adventure packet, so people can test out the adventure, try out the new rules. So I thought it'd be interesting to go over the differences so far between D&D 5e and Tales of the Valiant, so people can see if you're interested and you don't know the changes yet. We'll get the DM kind of going over it and the player's response, and you can see what you think so far of Tales of the Valiant. So the first major difference we'll go over is just character creation. So right off the bat, I mentioned this to you a little bit before, you'll note that the stats skew a little higher in Tales of the Valiant. You still can buy the same way, roll your dice, standard array or point buy. And the point buy or standard array are both higher than the ones that are in the D&D core book. Mm-hmm. Just by a little bit, but it's a noticeable difference. So you're a little strong, a little beefier up front. If you do the dice rolls, still the same thing. You roll 4d6, take away the lowest one. Those 3 remaining are your stats. But then on top of that, you also pick a stat to add +2 to, and then another one for +1. Mm-hmm. So what that basically is doing is it's taking away the racial additives.
That's how D&D is now.
Well, I mean, not quite. I mean, it's made it so that there's a recommended +2 and +1, or 3 +1s, or whatever. Or the optional rule to put in Tasha's is that you can then instead change what the modifiers go into, which, of course, was all kinds of controversy for old classic gamers who were like, oh no, every orc's got to have +2 strength and be stupid or whatever. But now they just got rid of that entirely. Like, it's not related to your race at all. That's just so there's no controversy, no complaint about it. That's just never been a part of racial abilities to them. It's just going into your initial numbers.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Instead of race, it's
at
just
the beginning,
numbers.
it's up front. Yeah. Then instead of picking a race, that term is gone. Basically, you're choosing a lineage first, and that's what you'd think of as like your bloodline. So dwarf, elf, human, whatever. And there's no plus or minus modifiers to the dice. You just are what you are. And then what you get from that are what you get like from your genetics. So you feel like, what kind of vision capabilities do you have? What's your land speed? What kind of size possibilities do you have? Medium or small? Yeah. Whatever is linked into that. Then you have your heritage after that. So your heritage is what your upbringing was like.
So that like background?
A bit. So there is still background.
Okay. But
the heritage is a little more in-depth, if you will. And they're all like special certain classifications. Yeah, they're kind of similar. They're called things like cloud, wild, underground, whatever. So they're like, again, defining where you grew up in. And then the background still exists as well. That replaces like your personality traits, your connections, the things that they had. In your background, you'll have like your adventurer's motivation.
Okay.
The other major thing in character creation, you'll notice right away, is there are no alignments.
Okay.
So, and I believe that was in the first playtesting doc, alignment was still there, but it's not in the alpha rules, and it's not in the monsters that have been released so far. So, I think alignment's just gone.
That makes sense for the monsters, because they said there's nothing that's all evil or all good.
And that's something that they kind of have been moving away from in D&D.
Yeah.
And it's, again, caused controversy in Dungeons & Dragons because it's always been there, and people just are kind of don't like that they aren't immediately ascribing all beholders or whatever to be evil. Like, I don't want to have a good beholder in my world or whatever. But honestly, it also just gives you more freedom to act the way your character's going to act. And have the monsters be the way they are. I
want to see how everything balances out, because I think it's kind of interesting that the initial stats are higher, because like we always talk about how like once you get to a certain level pretty early on in D&D, you're pretty much it's impossible for you to die. So I'm curious why they made it even higher in that, but I also like that it does give more incentive to do the standard array or point buy, because the rolling can be so swingy, and like I like the satisfaction of rolling, but I'm starting to get kind of over rolling the stats, because like I see somebody else who rolled really good stats and I feel kind of bad. Like, why don't I have the good stats? So I feel like it's just a little bit more fair.
You're right that D&D does scale really weirdly, so that you feel very strong and almost unkillable pretty quick in the game. But they also, I believe, are going to try to scale the monsters up a little bit
and
accordingly,
if they're going to do
too.
that, then that makes more sense.
Right.
It feels like, well, you need like more details for your character than like to know like how to play them and like what, I don't know, I guess I need to see like what kind of options for the traveling motivation are. It doesn't like prompt you to like put it into your background. So some people might not think about it, and then they just aren't gonna have a very fleshed out character. I think a lot of people, if they're not told that they need to have like a bond or a flaw, they're not gonna put it in there. And yeah, I don't think that the alignment is necessary. Alignment is a good like guide to give you like an idea of how you want to play your character, but people change, so your character can change. You don't need to have them stuck in this box that after session 1 might not fit them anymore.
Moving past that, classes will be up next. Not much change in there, just worth kind of noting a bit that you'll still, from what they've said so far, have your 12 core classes, and then also the Mechanist, which I believe is supposed to probably replace Artificer, which is fine, because I have a real hard time with Artificer. Spells have kind of a big change and a small change at the same time, and we'll see really. I mean, ultimately it's going to depend on what they're going to retool a lot of them into, because there are some spells that get complaints about their power, their level, how they scale, or whatever. So we'll see what they do with those, or if they just kind of leave them the same. You know, who knows. One change is just that they have renamed spell level. It's just changed to spell ring.
Right.
Just because people always get confused with like the terminology, like you are a level 5 wizard, you can cast level 3 spells. Why can't I cast level 5 spells?
Yeah, especially when you're first learning. That's why I didn't play spellcasters for a long time. I was like, I don't know what this means.
And spellcasting is, I mean, still one of the more advanced things in general, because you have like the, you know, level and spells you know versus the spell slots. Now, the spells are also reclassified into different, like, bigger overarching types. So rather than just being like, this is the list of wizard spells, this is the list of bard spells, some of the things on the bard spell are also on the wizard list. Right now, if you look back in the back of the player's handbook, the lists of spells by class is very long and has a lot of like overlap between them. So they've kind of gotten rid of that. So the spells are divided into arcane, divine, primal, and weird. And so like a druid, for instance, will get access to all the spells that are on the primal spell list. And there's still going to be a little overlap between some of them. Some spells that appear on the primal may appear on the divine or the arcane, but there's still just fewer lists that you need to have printed in the book, you know. And so like a wizard will probably have access. You can have access to multiple different types too. They'll probably have, because they have the widest spell base tradition, they'll probably have both arcane and weird available to them. Weird is, Kobold has always had like a love of Lovecraftian stuff, and has always stuck a little section for like deep magic had like a little Lovecraft, Eldritch
Yeah.
thing in it. So
it might feel a little different.
and that'll probably where like a lot of your warlock stuff will probably draw
Right,
from
okay.
on that. Yeah, but it allows you to kind of switch. Also, you might have a cleric who draws from the arcane list instead of like a knowledge domain cleric or something like that. One other, you're aware that on your original spell list you have ritual spells where you can cast them as a ritual without burning a spell slot by taking more time to do them.
Yeah.
Those are still there,
Mm-hmm.
but they are now their own separate block of spells. So think of them like cantrips. So as you level up, you'll maybe get I get 2 new spells this level, and I get my 3rd cantrip, and I will also get a ritual spell. So they have their own separate number of those known.
Okay.
And you learn them as you level up separately than your normal spells. I think just to maybe take some confusion out of what kind of spells you can pick, or making there too many different weird subdivisions or ways and types of casting. And also so that you don't maybe accidentally keep picking a ton of ritual cast spells as your main spells when you're picking your spells at every level. I'm not really sure exactly what their thought process is, but it's not a bad idea at the same time.
I like that because I wish I had more ritual spells, especially as a warlock when I can't cast very many spells. I would like to have more of those that don't take up a spell slot. So the fact that you get free ones, I like that a lot.
Yeah, so, we haven't seen a lot of the spell casting stuff so far, but that's the basis. People have been saying that there are different combinations, wizards are able to put on mage armor and also a spell that gives them resistance to damages and some things that normally wouldn't have been possible as a combo.
Yeah.
You're able to pile on yourselves. We'll see if that still remains after playtesting, but so far there's a little bit of rebalancing on those spells, and we'll see how far they go with it. Before we move on to our next part, one other small change. This doesn't really have a good place to put it, but it is kind of a fun one. And this is actually something I've really always wanted to have happen in D&D books, really ever, especially with 5th edition, is that all of the weapons now have a special ability that you can unlock if you are proficient in the weapon.
Okay.
So any weapon you pick up, you can use, you can do some damage with it, but on top of just can I swing it better? Can I use my proficiency bonus? There's other things you can do, with shields. You might be able to bash.
Okay.
You might be able to use a bow to do a pinning shot on somebody and stick them to a rock or something like that. I've always thought that we need something like that to differentiate the weapons, because most of them are just raw numbers and don't really have a lot to give you much reason to pick one weapon over the other than this one does the most damage. Why would you ever basically not pick a rapier?
Yeah. Yeah,
over
it's
a short
boring
sword.
when every character has a rapier.
Everyone's got one. Yeah, there's not much reason to do anything otherwise, unless you're just a real stickler for flavor.
Yeah.
But otherwise, it's just the better weapon.
That's what been my complaint. Well, all my characters have rapiers. I want a different weapon.
Well, and now you might have a reason to have one.
Yeah.
So maybe it can do a bleeding cut that continues to do more damage.
That's cool.
Got more of a razor edge. Or
I
something.
like that a lot. Yeah,
So.
that'll make it way more different.
On to another more major change, and this is going to rewind back a little bit. During character creation, I mentioned talents. So you're going to get one with your heritage. So something you learn gives you a talent. And this is a mechanical game ability. It's basically like a feat in D&D.
Oh yeah,
right?
you start with one, right?
Which, you start with one here, and D&D is moving towards that. They're starting to put in that you start with a lower level feat from a selection, from a list, or what have you. So now you're for sure getting a talent here. Unlike in Dungeons & Dragons, where up till now, it's feats have been an optional rule. You don't actually have to allow them in the game. And only with the later, Spelljammer and Dragonlance have they put in backgrounds that give you feats.
Yeah.
So now every heritage will have a talent with it, and then instead of when you get level 4, or any time that you would get a stat bump from your leveling up from your class, you don't get the option of the +2 or a feat. You get +1 and a talent every time.
Okay. The +1 might be frustrating because you need 2 to get up to the next proficiency bonus.
Yeah.
But
Well, we'll see what they do with them too, because some of them, like in that's your stat modifier.
Yeah.
Sometimes in D&D they do have those ones that are like maybe give you like +1 to the stat, and also you get proficiency in the saving throw for that one. So there's a lot of them that still give you a little bump. Yeah. Maybe we'll see those in Tales of the Valiant once we get the full talent tree list as well. Mm-hmm. But I mean, it's interesting. I think I
do like the idea of getting both, because that's what I'm always frustrated by at each level, is having to pick, because I would rather be able to do both. Mm-hmm. But again, they're really making the characters beefier by doing that, so I'm curious how it's going to balance. Yeah.
So one thing for me that this is kind of cool, it's much more similar to like 3rd edition as well, where feats were much more prominent in the game. And like they were just a part of your leveling up. Like every 3rd level, you would pick a feat, and then
that's a lot of feats to keep track
of. And then the 4th level. That's why some people moved away from 3rd. Some people loved it. Obviously, like Pathfinder players, PF1 still play it, but for a lot of other folks, it was kind of too much, and they moved away from it.
Yeah,
I still think it's not a bad balance to maybe have a few fewer feats, because it's still, or talents in this case. You don't have as many as every 3rd level. Will be every 4th.
Yeah.
But I like having them in there. Honestly, it made the characters feel more differentiated when you had more different abilities that you could pick from and use and flavor your character with. So I don't mind that being in there at all.
Yeah.
So this brings us around to our last major difference from the playtest packet so far. I think this one is going to be very big for you in particular.
Oh, I think I know.
Yeah, I've already mentioned a little bit about this to you. So there is no more inspiration.
Okay.
Inspiration's gone, which won't make much difference at my table because I almost never give inspiration.
You've only ever given it once, so
I'm a big
might as well
codger
just
for
say
it.
you never give it.
I forget most of the time, and I also never you really stood out today. All my players are mid, instead replaced with luck. So you get luck points built up. So the way those work is every time you miss an attack roll, you get 1.
I'm going to get a lot.
You're going to get a lot. So, and you can then spend those to increase your die rolls on later misses. So if you rolled a 14 on an attack roll, you needed a 15, you need a point. Next turn you roll another 14, you can spend that. Now you got the 15. Pretty straightforward. You can only have 5 banked at a time. If you would ever get a 6th one, you roll a d4, and the roll is how many you then get. So you get kind of penalized for trying to stockpile them. So you definitely want to make sure you're always kind of using them, utilizing them. Things with that, you cannot use them on a natural 1. So 1 just crit misses.
That's not going to help.
Right. Well, it would stop you from crit missing.
Oh.
If there was a penalty to be had for it. So you can't roll or spend your way out of it. 1 is a 1.
Yeah.
Likewise, if you spend them to get up to a 20, it's not a critical, it's still just a dirty 20.
Yeah.
One other nice thing I like is that if you roll real bad and you can't do it, you can spend 3 of them to re-roll the die. So if you have a few of them banked up and you're like, well, I rolled like a 9, that's not going to hit, I'll spend 3 and just see what the second roll can do. You miss a lot. What do you think about that?
I love that.
Right? That's
because there will be games where I'll miss and I'll miss and I'll miss. There was a recent session where I asked you if I could have advantage for how many misses I had. I was like, have I missed enough that you can give me a pity advantage?
And my answer was no. But now, had you missed 3 times, then yes, you could. The opposite of that is the DM also gets them. Those are doom points.
Oh, is there a doom tracker so that we can see how many you've acquired?
Maybe. Yeah. No, I don't know.
I'll
put it at the top of the thing and be like, So here's how they work, though. So kind of the same thing. The DM can use them to beef up a monster attack and try and hit, fair is fair. That actually alone kind of helps, up the monster challenge level a little bit. That'll keep them hitting and grinding you down all the time.
Is it the same thing, for the amount of rolls you miss?
Yeah, it's 1 per miss, whatever. Okay. But they can also spend a number of them. I don't remember the number off the top of my head, but you spend a number of them to give a character disadvantage on a saving throw.
That's so mean. That'd be really funny, though. I kind of like that. And
you can spend them to recharge an attack on a monster. So say a dragon's breath weapon. Once they spend it, they recharge it on a 5 or 6.
Yeah.
And you'd be like, well, they've been missing a bit. spend some points, that breath weapon's back. And you don't have to worry about rolling the die for it. I mean, it's only fair. It's going to go both ways.
Yeah. And I think that making someone have disadvantage on the saving throw is...
That's definitely the meanest one. I don't know how often I'm going to do it, but I feel like when you get to a boss monster, like it's...
Yeah.
Players get ready. It's going to happen. Now, the meanest would be if you were to spend it on, like, a death save. You know, I'm 2 and 2. Well, I'm real tired of your character. Get that guy with Sentinel and Polearm Mastery out of here. Dead.
I would like to see that happen, but I don't think whoever you did that to would ever want to play with you again.
So that's what we have so far as the differences for Tales of the Valiant. What are you thinking so far, player?
I'm excited to try it. I've been wanting to do something a little bit different because I really like the character building in L5R. Mm-hmm. So I'm just wanting something to kind of feel like that a little bit more. And we'll see, because like I said, like there's some stuff that's missing from the character building. Mm-hmm. But like I think the lineage and heritage thing is interesting, and
yeah, I mean, they're not the first game to do it, but the game is Dungeons and Dragons, you know, just with a twist. And D&D always has had those things linked together. We know they're moving that way already in the core game, but here, just right from the start, they're just like going to say you get your proficiencies, your languages, your talents, all these things from how you were raised rather than how you were born, and making that distinction between those things and putting them in 3 different layers with 3 different selections of powers, proficiencies, and and traits and things all kind of layered on top of each other. So
yeah, I hope that it offers like some different options for background, because like while D&D has a lot, it still doesn't feel like a lot. Like there's a lot of stuff where I'm just like, I want to play a character like this, and this doesn't fit anywhere.
Well, a lot of those will be, I think, when you look at the stuff that you're thinking of from your background, I think they will be differentiated more, because they're going to be, a lot of them are going to be in the heritages, though. Yeah. Like in the heritages, the way they're separating your heritage is how you were raised, which is what we kind of think of as the background in D&D. And the background is more, again, just like the inciting incident, what made you an adventurer. So like, what is your background story, not necessarily how you were raised, as your character. Yeah. It's a subtle differentiation, but it layers different proficiencies and different abilities on top of each other. It puts them in different schools. But I think there are a lot of heritages, and even just in the playtest, that was a fairly robust little list. So hopefully you can find something that fits what you want. Yeah. And, just like in D&D, you can always make up one if you don't see one that you like. Yeah. I think it has a lot of promise so far. It's not wildly different than Dungeons and Dragons, but it does have a couple nice quality of life changes, and honestly, a lot of the murmur online, a lot of people so far have liked what they're doing in this better than what they've been doing with like D&D 1 when they're making the changes to the guides for 2024. I mean, it's really hard to say what they'll end up on. They're still very early in sorting out the feedback on that. Yeah. As well. For a long time, Dungeons & Dragons 5e has been like the top of the sales chart for RPG sales, just dominating. And the number 2 space has been supplements and other 5e compatible stuff from third party. I mean, it's been such a dominant force. It's crazy. I don't see people moving away from it anytime soon. I mean, luckily, there are plenty of people who are now starting to stretch their legs, look at other publishers, look at other games. And if you still want to stay in the familiar realm, but just a little bit different, Kobold Press has been making some of the best of that compatible material for quite a few years. So
we have another video about it that you can check out. I'll leave the card up in the top and the doobly-doo, where I had Dustin guess some of the monsters that they put out in their, what was it, Tome of Beasts 3?
Tome of Beasts 3, yeah. But anyway, let us know down below what you think. Are you planning on moving over to Tales of the Valiant?
Or at least give it a shot.
Yeah, or do you want to just add it into your 5e collection, because it is still going to be compatible? What have you thought about these changes? Do you like them? Do you dislike them? Let us know. Thank you for joining us for this look at Tales of the Valiant. You can, as always, sound off and let us know what you thought down below. And until next time, keep gaming.
See you soon.